so today we have two Honda legends from the early 2000s. On the left, we have the Honda CBR954RR. This is a 2003 model. And on the right, we have a Honda RC51 SP2 from 2006. And I'm just going to quickly explain the differences. I've owned both of these bikes for a little while now. I've had the RC for a few years. I've had the 954 for about a year. And I'm going to just kind of explain what the differences are between the two and maybe on why you might want to pick one over the other. So first off, I want to say that this isn't a completely fair comparison because the RC51 is modified and the 954 is mostly stock. The 954 does have a Micron slip-on exhaust, and from the factory, the 954 has titanium headers, which is pretty cool. So most people just usually do the slip-on because the headers are actually really nice on this bike. It does have some Saito Racing frame sliders. It has these aftermarket turn signals in the front, but other than that, completely stock, as you can see with the big old fender that I put on myself, and I'm very proud of that because these bikes, all OEM, are getting rare and hard to find. I wish my RC51 was all OEM, but it's okay because it has been tastefully modded. It has a Saito Racing slip-on exhaust, and it has the dual muffler, as you can see right here. It also has a chopped fender, but the chopped fender looks really nice, and it has aftermarket LED stop lights right here, which actually look really good and are very bright. It has in the front some braided, Superbike braided brake lines going all the way down, and these ones feed directly into the caliper, which have a more consistent feel. They were definitely the most expensive option I could find. Also, we have an MRA, slightly light tinted windshield. And over to the cockpit here, we do have a gear indicator right there, and I'll just quickly turn this so you can see that. See how it cycles through. Turn that off. This bike has 9,500 miles. And if we move over to the 954, this one actually does also have a gear indicator. As you can see, it cycles right through. And I have this quad lock, which is for my phone. The RC51 also does have these Race Torx axle lifters right here, which look really nice and quick adjustments, so I can adjust the chain really fast. And it has a titanium Race Torx bolt. I'll have a link in the description below. These are actually pre-drilled, so you can go to the track. It's already ready to be safety wired together, which is really nice. Good feature to have if you like to take your bikes to the track. So the big two differences with these bikes, both are race-oriented bikes. They could be brought to the track. This was Honda's flagship 954. It was their Fireblade. It was their biggest CBR that they sold. The RC51 was a homologation bike for Honda to race the RC51 in the V-twin Superbike races, and that's when you heard of Nicky Hayden, rest his soul. He was a champion on this bike back in the early 2000s. And you can get the Nicky Hayden edition models of these, but they are quite expensive for the 2004 model. And as I'm looking at it, I gotta mention, the other aftermarket piece that this bike has is the Blackstone Tech BST fully carbon fiber wheel in the front. The rear is some sort of chrome wheel that the previous owner put on, but I was able to put this carbon fiber wheel on, and I'm still on the search for carbon fiber for the rear. Even though both of these bikes are race bikes and they're both about 1,000 cc. This one is 999, I believe, and this one is 954, as the name, but they both make a lot of power. The only difference is that the CBR954 is an inline 4-cylinder. And as you can see right under here, might be kind of hard to tell, but you have 4 exhaust headers right there versus the RC51, which is a V-twin. The RC51 also has these side-mounted radiators. You have one on this side as well, whereas the 954 has a traditional mounted front radiator, which you probably won't be able to really see. Yeah, right there. I believe Honda put the radiators on the side so they could tilt the engine further forward, helping the center of gravity. But overall, the front-mounted radiator is probably the better way to go, which is why Honda switched back to it. But the side mounts actually look really cool. The way that these bikes make power, and I'm going to take these on the road and do a quick road test for you guys, the 954 has a lot more top-end power. It makes more horsepower, about 150-ish. I'll put it on the screen. And the RC51 makes about 20 less horsepower than that, somewhere around the 130 range. A lot more torque down low, right off the line, you feel it. Not that the 954 is lacking in torque, and not that the RC51 is lacking in top-end power. Both bikes have plenty of power all across the rev range, but the RC51 definitely shines at the bottom. and the 954 shines at the top. Also, seating position is very different. As you can see from the side view right here, the 954 is actually not the most uncomfortable bike. It actually has a pretty good comfort. The clip-ons are, as you can note right here, go above the triples. And the seat is actually kind of close to the triple as well, so you're not bent over the gas tank. Versus the RC51, which, as you can see, these clip-ons, they go down quite a bit. And just a quick comparison between the two, it's easy to see that your wrists and back and neck are going to be a lot more pain on the RC51 than it would be on a 954. The heat that comes out of this RC51 is insane. And that is why I did install a spall fan, which is an upgrade for the radiators that goes behind. There's two, I believe they're push fans, and they can even be activated with this button right here. See? And I did that so when you're in traffic and it's getting hot, you can hit that button and cool yourself down, because these bikes, they run extremely hot. Very hot, not good bikes on a hot sunny day. If you live in a warm climate, you got to do the spall fan mod and a manual override switch, or you will cook yourself. Now the 954, although not the coldest running bike in the world, it does run a little hot as well. These older, larger leader bikes tend to do that. It's not like the RC51 though. You can get by. As long as you're not sitting in standstill traffic for long periods of time, you'll probably be okay on the 954. RC51, totally different story. The brakes on both of these models, I believe they're the same. They might be a little bit bigger on the 954. I can tell you right now that the brake and feel on each of them is pretty much the same. I don't really notice too much of a difference. Both bikes stop fantastically well. And as for the rear brake, again, you kind of got the same story, same kind of caliper and disc setup. The way that these suspensions run are completely different. The RC51, it holds its line better, it locks in, it clicks in, it feels planted. It's very rough over bumps, very street track oriented bike versus the 954, which it's a little bit softer on the bumps. It's not gonna kill you if you hit a couple bumps, but it still has good suspension when you go around the corners. So you can ride this bike fast without trying. The RC51 is definitely more of a pro bike. To ride this bike fast, you have to be a good rider. The 954 allows you to be lazy. It allows you to chug along in second gear, and you can just have power everywhere, and the suspension takes care of a lot of things, and you have good leverage over the bars. You can ride faster, easier on the 954. Now, I want to talk a little bit about something that's very important to me, and something probably a lot of people don't talk about, and that is reliability. Both of these bikes are Hondas, so both should be reliable, correct? I would venture to say no. They're on two different planes of reliability entirely. The RC51 is a very, very reliable bike. There's hardly any issues at all with these. These bikes have gear-driven cams. They can run up to 50,000 miles. They are totally race-built, fast, strong, good power plant. This engine is proven to be very reliable. Like I said, cam-driven gears, everything. Honda made these things bulletproof. The 954, people will say they're bulletproof, but I've learned they are not. These 954s actually are pretty fragile. The reason being, this engine is made off of the 929. Honda, rather than making a whole new engine, they punched the 929 out and made it bigger and faster. So that's what gave the extra horsepower, but with the extra horsepower comes an expensive reliability. So the 954, they have issues with their second gear going, and I understand the second gear has nothing to do with the actual engine itself, it's the transmission, but they do have second gear problems. It's been very well documented and known. Also, the clutch springs on these bikes as well, after time, they start backing out, and you gotta replace the whole basket. That's a $500 fix. All right, guys, so we are on the test ride portion of this review. I'm wearing all my gear, and we are on the 954. Now, this bike is a 954cc inline 4, and before we go, I'll just give you a quick rev of it. This thing revs quick, and it has a bite to it in the sound department, absolutely. But anyway, let's go ahead and take off. This bike, like I said before, it's actually pretty comfortable. The handlebars, not a far reach. Slight bend to my back, not too bad. But anyway,
Whoa, okay, I gotta be careful. This sand, it just rained here the last couple of days, and there's a lot of sand and whatnot, so the streets are definitely filthy, especially after coming out of a long winter. We are still in March here while I'm filming this video, but wow. Oh man, the power of a liter. It's something. It is quite something. This is a different animal entirely from the RC51, and I'm gonna say this right now, this thing has a lot of bottom end. If you're worried about bottom end and you're picking the RC simply for bottom end, don't. It's not that much better on the bottom end, and in fact I don't even know if it is better on the bottom end, because this thing revs up so quick. Right here, you're already out of the bottom end, you're in the mid-range. You're not even in the bottom end very long. It gets into the mid-range so quick because of how fast this bike's accelerates. So that is nice with this bike, and as I said before, pretty comfortable. Not too uncomfortable, not the most comfortable bike in the world. It's not like an FZ09 or something like that, but it is, oh man, this bike makes a lot of raw power. So if you are a thrill seeker or something like that, then this bike absolutely fits the bill. If you have one of these bikes, honestly, you gotta have a lot of common sense. You gotta be, I said earlier, a speed demon would love a bike like this. I don't think a speed demon should get a bike like this, because I don't think you'll last very long. This bike actually handles okay. It's not bad. It, I mean, again, the roads suck here, but it does dip in well. It's pretty flickable. It hides its weight well. When you're moving, it kind of feels like a 600. I don't really know how else to describe it. It just kind of goes like a 600 until you know, do this with your wrist. Then it's like, nope, not a 600. Tons of power. It's very mechanical. You got a mechanical throttle. You got mechanical wire. Everything. Everything is mechanical. There's no ABS, there's no traction control, there's no steering damper, there's nothing. It's just get on and go. And to be fair to the RC51, it's the same thing too. Now, you'll hear me say the RC51 is raw. That's the thing about these early 2000s sport bikes. They are raw. The brakes are fantastic, and I mean, they're not something like, oh god, who almost had to test them real quick. So yeah, I had to kind of test it right there. I looked down for a second, saw the car, I was like, what? But yeah, like a bike with this fast, it could stop, you know? It could just stop on a dime. It's good. It's good to have that, and it handles. And that's kind of like the thing I like about sport bikes, is that even though they can get you into trouble with the speed, they can also help you out. There are times when you need to power out of situations. There are times when you have to brake, just like back then. There are times where you have to swerve. All those things lend well to a sport bike, especially a super bike. Problem is, though, people ride out of their abilities. You know, people are riding way too fast, including myself, and in an unpredictable environment like the public roads. Very unpredictable. You don't, like that person in front of me, you know, complete stop. They used that blinker, they did nothing wrong. I was just looking down. It happens, you know? And things like that happen all the time. At a glance, the gauges are easy to read. You got the tachometer right there, speedometer right there. You have your temperature. You have, you even have a clock on this thing, which is, although mine's not set, you don't get that on an RC51. You get very few creature comforts on the RC51. So anyway, guys, let's go ahead and show you the RC51. See how that compares to the 954. So now we are on the 2006 Honda RC51 SP2. Again, guys, it is modified. It has a power commander, a Saito Racing exhaust, a couple other goodies. But anyway, let's hear that Saito Racing exhaust. And you can hear those gear-driven cams. You can hear them right in there. Hear that little whine? That's the gear-driven cams. Those things will outlast the motor, seriously. Very sophisticated design. You'll never need a cam chain tensioner ever on one of these bikes. But anyway, this bike, again, 2006, a little bit newer. Same old design, though, for the most part. The SP2, I believe, came out in 02. Shouldn't be too much different. And right here is the Spall fan mod that turns on the side fans. keeping this bike just a little bit cooler. Let's see, this bike does run hot, but on a day like today where it's only about 50 degrees, it is welcomed. And you can see those temperatures are dropping rapidly. Like I said, pretty much a must-do mod if you own one of these bikes, in my opinion. But anyway, let's get on with it. So, right away, off the line, you feel that torque just a little bit. It has good power. It's not, like I said, better low-end power. So, the gauges are a little deceiving. This bike only revs to about 10,000 RPM. So, low-end is 2,000, 3,000 RPM. And where that is on the CBR954, you pretty much pass it almost immediately. And as you can see, this bike is, it might brake, by the way. I gotta bleed it or something. I don't know, something's going on with it, so I can't go too crazy with this bike. Not that I would anyway. But the power's there. It's very linear. It's very smooth too. Very smooth and linear. It's not like peaky down low and then it tapers off too fast. I think the part where it really tapers off is right around 7,000 RPM, 8,000 RPM. It's not like an inline 4. If you're used to 600s or 1000s and you're used to that inline 4 peaky power bands, then that will be a little bit of a surprise to you that this bike kind of falls on its face when it gets up there. But that mid-range and low-range power, it's there and it's very apparent. And when you go around corners, it just hooks the corner. And like, these aren't some crazy corners, and again, the streets are kind of screwed up, but these are the corners that you feel like it hooks into it. It feels very good. And the downshifts are crisp. This transmission is fantastic. Mwah. It is a very good transmission. Give it the chef's kiss. But overall, the bike it's actually pretty flickable. And for a bike that weighs as much as this one does, it hides its weight exceptionally well. Very good bike, for very balanced. And I can't really test the brakes. Like I said, the brakes kind of, I don't know what's going on with that. I gotta fix that. But this bike is a lot less scary to ride than the 954. I will say that. I am much like at ease on this bike. I feel like, oh good, I'm back at home when I get on this bike. It's very uncomfortable. I will say that. I mean, we're talking, you are really hunched over. But if you really focus on squeezing the gas tank with your legs, it's not too bad. It really isn't that bad. Just, you really gotta have good sport bike position to really like get the most out of the seat. But yeah, the power's pretty much on tap. It's not scary power though. This bike does feel a little bit slow, if I'm gonna be honest with you. Especially after jumping off of that 954. The 954, totally different animal. But I'll be honest with you guys, I like this better. This feels better to me. But yeah, these bikes are cool, man, and they do run hot. They are definitely happier at the track than they would be at the on the streets. That's a given. Oh my god. But the transmission is so good. Like, the transmission on the 954, even though mine has it works fine, it's not like broken, it's clunky though. You feel the clunk. On this bike you don't. This bike just, the shifts are so good. What a treat to ride this bike. Seriously, what a treat. I really do like this bike a lot more than the 954. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Now, the 954, it's so much, if you like fast and speed, 954 all day. I mean, you can't compare the two. The 954 is so much faster. But for cool factor and just having a good time, this bike is better. It's just simply better. And as long as you don't care about stupid things like track speeds and all that crap and going a million miles an hour, then this bike is the bike you should get. It really is. I mean, and these bikes are becoming harder and harder to find. Same with the 954. They both kind of have that rarity factor to them. So you can't let that play in too much when choosing yours. But I will say this, that these bikes are cooler than the 954. It just is. I mean, the 954 is a cool bike. The new Fireblades have all been better, pretty much. Well, I would say the most recent one probably is, because they finally got the weight down. But this bike, they never made a replacement for this bike. They never continued the RC51. They stopped it after this model year of 2006. I will say this though, the bike is tall. A little bit taller than the 954, not by much. But it has a little bit of height. And yeah, look at that design though, look at it. It's just, this bike is a bike I would always think looks good. I would always stop and stare at this bike. The 954 doesn't have the looks that this bike does. But anyway guys, that's my comparison video between the RC51 and the 954. Both incredible bikes, especially for the time. Honda back then, there was no competition for Honda back then in my opinion. The Suzukis, the Yamahas, all of them, they all fell flat when it came to the early 2000s. I mean, these bikes are really something special. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care and stay safe out there guys. Bye bye.
Sick news for your little arrows out. Let me live my life, the one I'd better lead. All the plans of fantasies, and we looked at them 11 ways. You said, look at me, I looked away, and you wrote the song I wanna play. All